Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending. My name is Bob Donnelly. I'm chair of the Norwood Board of Selectmen. And before I introduce tonight's agenda and speakers, on behalf of the community, I want to extend condolences to the victims of yesterday's plane crash in Washington, D.C. As we now know, among the victims are 2 young skaters from the Boston Skating Club, their moms, and 2 coaches from the club. I ask that you remember them in your thoughts and your prayers. And we also extend the condolences to the Boston Skating Club community for this unbearable loss. So before I begin, I'm going to recognize a moment of silence in tribute to the victims of yesterday's crash. Thank you very much. I'm joined here with this is the official meeting of our Board of Selectmen. On my right is Selectman Sad, Selectman Grow, Selectman Lane. Due to a medical situation, Selectman Glasgow is unable to attend. And we're also joined by the Board of Health to my left here, so welcome, Board of Health. And I'll introduce tonight's speakers, who are also to my right. This evening, you will hear from our town manager, Tony Mazzucco, United States Congressman Stephen Lynch, representing Massachusetts 8th Congressional District, and State Representative John Rogers. We also have a speaking slot for Paul Ronco from the Norwood Fire Department and Local 1131, and Paul's going to give us a perspective from a first responder's point of view regarding the situation with the hospital. Mr. Mazzucco has been asked by the board to lead the effort to work with the state, federal, and local officials in addressing the ways and means needed to find a solution to the reopening of the acute care hospital that served Norwood and the region for over 100 years. Congressman Lynch has been instrumental to this effort by providing his time and dedicating his leadership to understand the healthcare issues facing the region as a result of the closure. We thank the Congressman for leading the effort to organize a recent meeting with Governor Healy and her public health staff. Representative Rogers will speak to the legislative work and outreach that he and Senator Mike Rush have put forward to also find a solution to this urgent situation. So on behalf of the board, I thank each of our speakers for being here this evening, and I will now turn it over to Mr. Mazzucco, who is going to give a presentation just to give you some context regarding where we've been and what our situation is today and so forth, and then we'll hear from our representatives. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start by sharing some slides and just bringing us all up to speed on some information that most of us will know about what the hospital was, where it was, and where we think we may be going. Most of you will know that the hospital closed in June of 2020 after a devastating storm. At the time, 130 patients were evacuated from the hospital. Norwood Police and Norwood Fire did that in conjunction with dozens of other agencies, and there wasn't a single injury among patients on that day. And that's an incredible feat. And it's important to note that we did that working with our regional partners, and because the pandemic was 3 months in, MEMA, our state emergency management agency, did not respond. They did not offer any significant assistance. This was Norwood that was able to do this. Towns as far away as Plymouth were involved, and we forget that this was a storm. It was both a microburst and what's known as a 500-year storm hit us at the same time. We suffered 6 inches of rain in under an hour, so it was a significant storm. That night and the next day, the estimates were 3 to 4 weeks to get the ER up and running. Certainly, we found out that that was not the case. It's important to remember what Norwood Hospital was. It was an acute care facility, and that word is important. There were more than 130 beds, and the ER had a cardiac cath lab. It is not a community hospital. It is a regional hospital. And candidly, that's an issue that I think sometimes at certain levels of state government, they don't understand that this was a regional hospital serving a large region. The catchment area includes more than 250,000 residents. You can see there the list of towns that are in the immediate and the secondary catchment area. The cascading effect of transports to other hospitals is impacting towns outside of this region. The loss of Norwood Hospital is creating an emergency services crisis here in Norwood, in the surrounding towns, and 2 or 3 or 4 towns away that had never gone to Norwood and never would go to Norwood, but now because other towns are diverting to there, they're seeing a backup in their emergency services. It's also important to note, in the context of it not being a small local hospital, our population's 31,000 in Norwood. We have a census population, a daytime population of about 60,000. That means on a given workday, the reason you can't get from one end of Norwood to the other in less than 20 minutes is there's a lot of people working in town. And in this region, that's also the case. If you've ever tried to get to Legacy Place or the Rentham outlets in the holidays, forget about it. A concert at Gillette, forget about it. This is a busy region with a lot of people, not just those who live here, but any given day there are a lot of people in one part of central region, central Norfolk County or the other. I find this to be the most, probably the most important slide that I usually like to show. The last year of the hospital's full operation, 126,000 patients. 2018, $11 million in profit. 2019, $25 million in profit. These figures come from the state as they're required to report these figures to the state. Now, it's important to note that those profit figures were achieved with a large payment to the landlord. Norwood was one of the objectively most profitable hospitals in the state for its size prior to its closure as a result of the storm. The ER in its last full year of operation, 42,000 ER visits. So that's what we have to think has happened in the last couple of years that the area has tried to absorb, is more than 40,000 ER visits. The average stay was 5.3 days. Those of you in Norwood, I know we have a lot of folks from outside of the town, are familiar with these images. We have been living by it and driving by it every day. These are some from behind the fence showing the level of construction that's been ongoing at the hospital and the significant level of investment that has been going on to the hospital. You'll notice at the top of this picture here, the HVAC system for the building is installed. There has been close to $100 million invested in the building. This is not simply it's a shell of a building, but it's been a significant investment to date. You can see there some of the siding and the glass. I'm going to transition to talking a little bit about Medical Properties Trust, who they are and what we know about them. Medical Properties Trust, we call them MPT, is a real estate investment trust. They own the property. Most of you know there is some incredibly complicated story of how the hospital went from being steward through all sorts of shenanigans and land deals and real estate and borrowings. I couldn't begin to figure out what it is, but for better or for worse, that is past. Medical Properties Trust owns the property free and clear. They don't have a mortgage. They don't owe it to anyone else. There's no secret shadow ownership, at least that we know of. So at least we know the property's owned free and clear. Medical Properties Trust began communicating with us around October of this year, and we appreciate that they at least pick up the phone. It has been difficult to reach some of our partners in state government, and I want to be clear, I'm referring to the administration, who has been willing to work with us lately, but just lately. Medical Properties Trust has clearly stated they want to get a deal done on the property. They want to sell it and leave Massachusetts. Obviously, their goal is to make as much money as they want. Our goal is to get a hospital, but they only make that amount of money if they can sell it to somebody for an acute care hospital. Any other type of facility going in there, they're not going to get that level of money. Our interest is a hospital, and sometimes it's a little frustrating working with the state to let them know that our interest is a hospital, but we'll go from there. I will say that Medical Properties Trust has been clear they want to exit the state. The governor's administration has been clear they would like Medical Properties Trust to exit the state. We want a hospital, but sometimes it feels like I'm mediating a divorce between two folks who are not getting along, and there's a lot of bad blood there for all sorts of political reasons that we can all understand, but our focus is on the hospital, and I think we've been successful at least getting the administration to want to work with us, knowing that our focus is the hospital and getting a hospital up and running. Politics and games can come later. We need a hospital. Lengthy slide, we don't have to go through every single one of these, but I'm going to talk for a moment about what a determination of need is because it's important. Hospitals require a determination of need for their operation, for any significant capital they do, if they build anything out, if they add anything. It's essentially part of their business plan. It does outline the services that the hospital can provide. Now, DONs can be amended, they can be edited. There was an emergency DON that was issued when the hospital closed. That expired. Some of the language you can see up here has come directly from HHS. I don't know if it's worth going into their opinion on whether or not it should or should not have expired. They're clear that a new operator for the hospital would need to apply for new DON. One of the frustrations we have heard from Medical Properties Trust is that they want to make sure that the state supports somebody coming in to do that and doesn't drive through a overly bureaucratic process. You can see down there the DPH will review any application for a new DON according to the statutory and regulatory framework. They have privately stated that they're willing to work with us and they will help anyone through the process. The language may not be as strong as we would want, but at least privately I can tell you the governor did call me today and said if there's a viable plan, she's going to support it. It's frustrating and it's bureaucratic, and tonight is the beginning of a process that at some point we are going to need to make sure the state understands the need, and I think they do, but there will be other times to show the need for the hospital and the urgency of the hospital. Representative Rogers and Senator Rush have filed numerous bills and made repeated requests of HHS leadership and the governor. They have been fighting for months. They have received little in the way of cooperation and communication. That does seem to be changing lately. We had a great meeting Monday. I'll let the representative and the congressman explain that, but it has been frustrating that there has been a lack of communication. In mid-November, there was a meeting held at the State House. Representatives from Norwood, labor groups in the area, Representative Rogers and Senator Rush and Congressman Lynch. That meeting was left left with everyone signing a letter, hand-delivering it to the governor, asking for a meeting. We finally had that meeting. This is from a previous slide, but Congressman Lynch is well-versed on the topic, as well as Representative Rogers and Senator Rush, and they've been advocating for us all along. We had a meeting Monday with the governor, the HHS secretary, and the commissioner of public health. I would say it was a productive discussion. We believe the state heard us, and the congressman and the representative will elaborate a bit on that. At the end of the day, our need is fairly simple: an acute care hospital at the Norwood site, fundamentally the same services as before. That has been what we've always advocated for, and that's what we're going to be advocating for in the future going forward. The challenge that we're facing, and incidentally, I don't know how or why it sort of falls on the town to take the lead in this, but it seems like that might be where we're going, is finding an operator that has the experience, the capital backing, and the operating margins to take on an endeavor like this. Hospitals are large operations. They require not only buying the property, finishing it, but getting it up and running takes a lot of money. I know I've been asked a lot of times, could the town just buy it and run the hospital? Financially, it's just a much larger operation than us. Believe me, I run the numbers because I enjoy running tax numbers. The override we would need would triple or quadruple our taxes. It's just we couldn't take on an operation that large. That does not mean that we could not somehow play a role if the ultimate financing picture looks like it needs support from somewhere. But just buying and building a hospital is not something that one town could do, or even trying to get 6 or 7 towns to do. But we have a role to play. So our frustration has been when we hear from the state, gee, it's a big financial hurdle. Well, let's identify what that is and see how we can get there. The property has to be purchased, construction completed. There needs to be a viable business plan. I think this is possible. The state has finally come out and said that they'll work with us, and they're looking forward to working with us, which is positive as we move forward. I'm going to pause for a moment. We're going to bring up our first of 3 speakers, and the first one is going to be Paul Ronco, who's the president of Local 1631, just to share what the impact of the loss of the hospital has been on our first responders. And Paul, I'm sorry about the picture. I had to throw this together last minute. So I pulled it from the internet. My apologies to the representative and the congressman. Same thing. We put it on there so there'd be some background so you can look at the speaker. But Paul, feel free to share with us just the impact on our first responders from the hospital closure.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for the invite today. I think everybody in this room is on the same page as far as we need a hospital. I do need to thank a couple people that have been very, very strong advocates to making this happen. Congressman Lynch, I can't say enough. Just setting up that meeting on Monday was a step in the right direction, along with our Senator Mike Rush and Representative John Rogers. They've been fantastic through this process. They're really going to bat for us, and everybody in this room needs to hear that, along with our town manager, Tony Mazzucco. So a little over 4.5 years ago, we had the flood here in Norwood. There are actually some members in the room right now that actually responded to that day. We had hundreds of calls that came in, and that flood left us without a hospital. We were very fortunate before, about 10 square miles here in Norwood, so even the furthest point away in Norwood, we were literally 5 minutes away from the critical care hospital that had a cath lab. It's a stroke center, and it could do most traumas. So we were very, very spoiled having that in our backyard. When that went away, it just complicated everything over the last 4 years. And it's not affected just my members here in Norwood, but also from the surrounding towns, Westwood, Walpole, Canton, Sharon, you name it. It's just a trickle-down effect. So now we run two ALS ambulances or advanced life support ambulances here in town. Before, if we picked up a patient, again, we're 5 minutes down the road, we can drop off that patient. If another call comes in, 2 minutes later, we're back on the road and we're heading out to the next call. We don't have that luxury right now. When we're getting a call, the minimum is we're going to be spending 15 to 20 minutes just to get to BI Needham. And that is for not any of the critical calls that we come across. If somebody's having a heart attack, we have to bring them to a cath lab, and the closest cath lab right now is in Brockton. And if that is an option, we're heading in town in Boston. Time, when you're having a heart attack, time is muscle. That's muscle we can't get back. Our members, my hat's off, we got a bunch of them in the back of the room. They've been unbelievable with what they've been going through. They're doing their best. They're running through their protocols. They're doing everything we can to get somebody to a cath lab. But it's very disheartening when we're sitting 25, 30 minutes trying to get down Route 24 at 5 o'clock in the evening, or heading into town at that time. It's just very, very disheartening, especially when you pick up a patient in Norwood and you have to drive by a hospital that you used to be able to drop that patient off. Just very disheartening. There's been quite the wear and tear on our ambulances, our apparatus, but for the most part, our members are really getting beat up. 6 months after the hospital went down, Steward came to us and told us that they'd have, actually it was a couple of weeks after the hospital went down, they said they'd have an ER up and running in 6 months. So at that point, we were just telling our members, if you can just tread water for the next 6 months, we'll have an ER up and running, and it'll be back to normal. Well, that's 4.5 years ago, and our members can't tread water anymore. It's a tremendous wear and tear on us, both physically and mentally, emotionally, but all that ripple effect goes out to all our surrounding fire departments. When we have both our ambulances are tied up, we're calling Westwood to come in, or Walpole, or Sharon, or Canton, and then if a call comes in their towns, they're reaching out to another town because theirs is tied up in Norwood. Just in the last month alone, I think it was the first 25 days of this year, we had 56 mutual aid ambulances in town in 25 days. It's not sustainable. We need this hospital back. And I know everybody up here is doing the best they can, and I wish we had more answers for you, but again, this is more informational, but at some point, we're going to need voices to be heard, so that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, good. Was I in third grade in that picture? What the heck? Wow, look at all the hair. Wow. Well, thank you for coming together as a community, because we care so much about Norwood Hospital. And, I love about democracy, we're supposed to have disagreements on issues and things like that. That's okay. But we all come together agreeing on one thing. We need a new hospital back here in Norwood, not only just for the people of Norwood, but for the people of the entire region. And, today we celebrate how precious life is when we think about the 6 community members that we lost in the tragic plane crash. And I think of Jenna and Spencer and their moms, Jen and Christine, and the coaches, Evgenia and Vadim, who spent so many hours and so much time coaching and helping, and the parents loving and, just nurturing. And those 2 kids, I think of, had the promise of their life ahead of them, and all happened here in Norwood. It is the best community on the face of the planet. And we gather, today because we want that to continue. What made Norwood such a wonderful, one of the contributing factors, we had such a wonderful hospital for a century. We've all known people that were born there. We've all known people that died there. We've shed tears of joy and tears of sorrow there. I was talking to the president of Ponce Valley Chamber of Commerce this morning, Tom O'Rourke, a lifelong and dear friend of mine, and just the impact on our business community alone, never mind the quality of care for our patients. So, I think about those 2 kids whose lives we lost, Jenna and Spencer, and I think about our future and how fragile that is. So, 4.5 years ago, it seems like 4.5 decades ago, just the loss of an emergency department alone. There's no way to quantify how precious that is for our community. My daughter was involved in a rollover, and I'm thinking, okay, we'll all go to Norwood Hospital, and now I'm following the ambulance down to Brockton. There are thousands of stories like that you have experienced. So, it's been a long road. I want to thank my counterpart in federal government. We have the best congressman in the entire United States Congress, Steve Lynch, and my counterpart in the state legislature, Mike Rush. Just after the flood, we met with the owners. They flew up from Dallas, and at that time, remember, they were looking to cash out and just try to sell their, the property, and there was no commitment at that time really to, renovate at that time or build a new hospital. But, we assured them we would work with state and federal regulators, Congressman Lynch with CMMS, and Senator Rush and I with, Executive Office of Health and Human Services, the Baker administration, the DPH, and the Determination of Need program, which was great. It was a good dynamic. And then we had problems along the way, but they did commit at a year later to building a new hospital, tearing down the old. We worked with the administration to accelerate the review processes, the plan review, design review, to collapse those 2 processes together and accelerate the process by which emerged emergency DON. That was in August of 2021. So this was great. And the last thing that Senator Rush and I had to do was call National Grid because there was some delay in them coming out, cutting and capping the 3 gas lines that went on the premises to the old Norwood Hospital. But once that was done, the professional engineer signed off on that, as is required by state law now, after the Columbia tragedy. Demolition occurred. And I remember looking on the other side of the fence as the demolition occurred, and I just saw these young ladies. There were 6 of them. Some of them played on my daughter's hockey team here at Norwood High School. And they were clapping because it was about their future. It was about a new beginning that was so promising to all of us. And, then we had the topping off ceremony. Congressman Lynch's old friends at Local 7 iron workers were there topping off. And there was so much promise. And 2023 was a great year. Until, of course, this very month, 1 year ago, our world changed. and then construction stopped, and then it started again with MPT resuming in April. In September, Senator Rush and I sent a letter to the governor asking that she impanel a task force similar to the Neshoba Valley, similar to the county hospital, but to focus on Norwood because they had just closed. Norwood had been closed for 4 years at that time. We thought we were going to get a positive reaction from that. What happened in October of 2024, just 13 weeks ago, this very day, the DPH, after it was required under Mass General Law, Chapter 111, to conduct a series of hearings, to hear testimony from you, from the stakeholders, from professionals, from healthcare, from nurses, from the first responder community, from patient advocacy groups. And they divined testimony and marshaled it all together, and 13 weeks ago came with this finding. It's one sentence. It basically says, Norwood Hospital is an essential service necessary for the preservation of healthcare access and health status within Norwood Hospital's service area. It's great news. But because of the holidays and because of the new year, it was like, as I say, the falling tree in the middle of the forest and no one's around to hear it. And we said to the governor the other day, Governor, thank you. The DPH just affirmed what the people of Norwood and beyond have known for decades. So please, Governor, we need your voice as the most powerful and persuasive voice in the Commonwealth to state that, to restate that, so we can attract a qualified, viable, eligible healthcare provider to assume, to buy out MPT, to resume construction, and to reopen a brand-new Norwood Hospital. The governor did call today. I think the governor called Tony as well, and Congressman Lynch. She, first of all, through us, wants to express her heartfelt sorrow and heartfelt and sincerest condolences for the loss of our 6 family members who perished in the plane crash. But she brought up Norwood Hospital. And, you know, Congressman Lynch on Monday started the meeting, Governor, we need a task force for Norwood. And ended the meeting, Governor, we need a task force for Norwood, a task force for Norwood Hospital. And the governor, like many chief executives, you know, non-committal, but taking it all in. We talked with my team, and we'll get back to you. Well, I'm happy to report that the governor is going to appoint a Norwood Hospital task force. So. And Senator Rush wanted to express equal eagerness to be here. He had an inescapable scheduling conflict, could not come, but you know, he and I have been working, as with Congressman Lynch, working hand in hand almost daily on this issue. And you know, there is a lawsuit that's pending now in Suffolk Superior Court. It is MPT versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. One of the arguments is that the determination of need is still viable, still active. The Commonwealth's position is that it expired on August 30th, 31st, and that the hospital license, which expired on November 5th of this past year, is still in existence because of legislation that Senator Rush and I worked on and passed, Omnibus Economic Development Bill. It's Chapter 238 of the Acts of 2024. And in Section 280, Paragraph B, Subparagraph 1, essentially says that any license or permit or determination that was in effect during the tolling period of January 1st, 2023 to January 1st, 2025 is hereby extended. It had to do anything with the development of real estate. So MPT's argument in Suffolk Superior Court is, therefore, the Norwood determination of need and Norwood hospital license is still in existence for a period of 2 years, and therefore, the DON does not expire until August 31st, 2026, and the Norwood hospital license does not expire until November 5th, 2026. So it will take a court, it will take a judge to make a determination on that legal argument, but there might be still life in both important documents that mean so much to us. So that's sort of, where we are and have come. A lot more detail. There's a lot of legislation that Senator Rush and I have filed. The other thing is working with Congressman Lynch. During those very dark days back in 2020, there were 400 patients that had surgeries scheduled for them, so we needed to seek a CMS waiver from the federal government. But and Congressman Lynch said, I can get a green light on that, but I need the Governor Baker and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services to seek the waiver. So we were able to speak with Governor Baker and Secretary Mary Lou Sutters, and they effected the request, and then Congressman Lynch worked his magic, and those surgeries went on schedule, all 400 of them. So there's vignettes of hope, of good news, but I know the big picture. You know the big picture. We still don't have a hospital. We need a hospital. 130-bed acute care hospital with an emergency department. Yes, we need that. We needed it yesterday. So I thank you all for your patience, for your understanding. We'll get this done. We're working together on this. This is the best town in America, and you're the best people that make up this great town. So God bless you all. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. It means a lot. First of all, I want to express my heartbroken condolences to all the families in Norwood who have been affected by the air disaster last evening. I know how much pride the people of Norwood have in the Norwood Skating Club. I know the type of parents that died with their kids, trying to share a moment of joy with them, attending that camp down in Wichita, Kansas. I've said this before at town meeting here, that you can tell the type of town that Norwood is by the way they take care of their seniors, the way they take care of their veterans, and the way you take care of your kids. And that was evident as part of the tragedy last night, where two moms were there, taking care of their kids, watching out for their kids. So we mourn the loss of the students, the coaches, the moms. Sometimes life just breaks your heart, and there's nothing you can do except, love them up. Just show them as much comfort and condolence as you possibly can. And I know already that the town of Norwood has embraced those families, and that the healing will begin. So let me just move on to the business at hand on Norwood Hospital. Norwood Hospital is needed. it is needed. I know there's a determination of need that has to be issued by the Commonwealth. But so I represent 18 towns and 3 cities. I represent the town of Norwood, but I also represent the town of Canton, Walpole, Dedham, Westwood, you know, all the towns surrounding Norwood. And I also represent the city of Brockton, the city of Boston, the city of Quincy. And one of the things that I looked at when Norwood Hospital went out of action after the flood was the impact that it had on my other hospitals and other communities. And so I went to the South Shore Hospital and talked to the CEO there and got a walkthrough. We walked through the emergency department. And for every emergency bed they had in that hospital, they had at least 2 people in the corridor outside. They call that boarding. When you go to a hospital and you should be admitted, but there's no bed available for you, they call that boarding. Boarding used to be a violation. Today, because of the lack of beds that we have in our state, it has become the practice. I went to Brockton Hospital, walked through their emergency department. They've got 30 beds there, emergency department. They've also got 30 people in cots out in the hallway. Went to the Mass General. Now that hospital's been in operation since the Civil War, basically. They had their largest number of boardings at Mass General in their entire history. So every hospital has experienced that. Went to Good Sam, Good Sam in Brockton, same thing. I talked to the CEO. I had a meeting with the CEO at Milton Hospital, same exact thing. You know, he volunteered himself. When I was talking about my visits to the other hospital, he said, oh yeah, we do that as well. So there's a determination of need, and there's an impact that has been caused by the closure of Brockton Hospital Norwood Hospital, that is not only affecting Norwood, but it's affecting the entire region. So Norwood Hospital is needed. It's not like we're asking to reopen a hospital that is not needed or not non-viable. And I say that because that determination of need will be critical in us moving forward. The demographic here that Norwood Hospital, they call it a catchment area. It means the number of people that Norwood Hospital services. It's about 250,000 people that Norwood Hospital services. And one other point that should not be ignored: Stewart Healthcare was awful. They are bandits. They will get their due someday. But even Stewart Healthcare, now they were all about the buck, all about the money, all about the profit. They had 60 hospitals. The only hospital in their 60 hospital system that they were actually investing money in, because they knew there was a buck in it, was Norwood Hospital. Norwood Hospital, because they knew the area. They know, a hospital looks at the number of people who have trust in that hospital, who trust the doctors, the nurses, who trust the quality of care. And so Stewart knew that Norwood Hospital was viable, and it was in their plans. And John described what had happened after the flood. They made a commitment to us. They said, we will rebuild a brand new hospital here. I doubted it. I really did. But then they went ahead and I guess they completed about 75% of the project from what I can see. I did a walkthrough at Norwood Hospital. Now we have a challenge, though. Now we have a challenge. There is no license there, so we own a construction site. My undergraduate degree is construction management. I spent 20 years as an iron worker. I ran a lot of work. So our challenge, I think, is beyond the capacity of just a task force to deal with. and I want you to consider this. We have to complete a construction process, right? That's just the shell of the building. That's, and the electrical and plumbing and HVAC, which is, it's high demand in a hospital. All that stuff has to be really done up to par, beyond residential. This is an institution that is going to care for our sickest members of our society. We also have to make sure that, now, when that building is finished, and Suffolk Construction is the general contractor, there still needs to be, equipment that is obtained to have MRIs, to have X-ray, to have nuclear medicine, to have all of the equipment and materials that docs and others will need to provide that care. And that's a huge cost as well. So we need to put a team in place, and I think we need a professional team that does this, and I think it'd take action. I'll rely on Tony Mazzucco to explain how this might happen, but I think we need authorization from the town to do this professionally, to actually, look, this is doable, but a bunch of people like myself, I work 4 days in Washington, and everybody else has a job. We're not going to do this part-time. We're not going to do this haphazardly. If we do it that approach, this will not happen. If we do it part-time, like we're going to get to do this, we'll get together once every 2 weeks or something like that. You need somebody whose job it is to get this done, and they need to be at their job every single day working hard to make sure that it happens. You really do need a professional team. It might require us to fund an entity that does this for a living to get Norwood Hospital back up and running. We don't even own the site. That's where, just for beginnings, we don't own that site. We don't have the ability to go in there and do what needs to be done. We've got to deal with this medical properties trust, a REIT, real estate investment trust. And so they want to extract money. They want us to, pay the highest possible price, meaning Massachusetts taxpayer to get possession of that hospital. But I think if we are tough, and look, they've got a non-performing asset. They've got 75% of a hospital that is generating zero income for them, zero revenue. So I think our bargaining position is strong. But what we need, and this is the meeting that we had with the governor on Monday, we need aggressive support. We need aggressive support on the part of the state. This is a state-driven process. If we had to exercise eminent domain to take that hospital, it would be a state process. You couldn't have two better state advocates than Mike Rush and John Rogers fighting for you up at the State House. And not only that, but all those towns that I represented have their senators and their reps that came to Driscoll, Representative Driscoll from Milton came, Feeney came as Senator Feeney had Representative Phillips. So you've got a critical mass of state officials who understand keenly what this means to all of you and what it means to their constituents as well. So we have the people in place, but like I say, we need to have a professional team that is working every single day to make this happen. Otherwise, we're just we're kidding ourselves. But all the elements are there. All the elements are there in terms of, one of our colleagues who came and testified before the governor on Monday, Dr. Christopher Perkins, was a doctor at Norwood Hospital. His dad used to deliver babies at Norwood Hospital, probably delivered some of you. But, Norwood Hospital had and still has a tremendous reputation in terms of doctors and nurses who believed in the mission, believed in the institution, felt good about the work they were doing every single day. That same mission is embodied by our firefighters, our EMTs, our first responders, our police officers, who also, spend a fair amount of money, a fair amount of time and effort in making sure that that level of care, emergency care in most cases, is delivered, and they have an intimate relationship on the operation of the hospital as well. And Kathy Reardon, also from the Mass Nurses Association, a nurse who worked at Norwood Hospital, also testified before the governor, and I think, her remarks as someone who had worked there for many, many years had a real impact on the governor's viewpoint here. So right now, MPT is asking for, they're saying they invested about $300 million in that project, which might be true, might not be true. But it's not worth $300 million right now because it's 75% complete. And like I said, it's what they call a non-performing asset. In other words, they're getting zero in revenue. So I think, how long can they stay like that? There's urgency on our part. We want to get an acute care hospital reopened there. We want to make it even better than it was before for the people of Norwood, but also the people from all those towns that were relying on Norwood Hospital. We can get this done, but we've got to be deliberate, we've got to be smart, and we've got to be fast. We've got to be fast. We want to make sure that this is done expeditiously, that if we're able to get some support from the state in terms of incentives to have people to come in and look at restarting, reopening Norwood Hospital, it'll be this is not going to happen overnight. We've got to finish that construction. So people are going to have to be patient. But at the same time, we've got to move expeditiously on this to make sure that we have a set timeline. We don't want to measure this in years. We want a year, 18 months type of process where we can actually see measurable progress on this and be well on the road to opening some aspect of it as we gradually get it back to a full opening. So some of this is going to have to be debated at town meeting, however you decide to proceed. But I've been representing the town of Norwood for 25 years, and I think I know a little bit about Norwood. And when you put your mind, and the other thing is that this region, I go to the Friends of St. Pat's. That's here, right? But half the people are from Walpole or some of the other towns. So there's a sense of friendship, except during the football game. But there's a sense of friendship and kinship between the towns. It just makes my job so easy. And then I go to the Friends of St. Nick, and it's all the people from Norwood are at the event for Walpole. There's I don't know, there's just a camaraderie, a friendship, a sense of purpose, and it's just good. It's a good vibe, and so that's the type of energy, that's the type of mutual support we're going to need to make sure that our efforts are successful. But I truly believe I would not be doing this if I didn't think we got a good shot at it. But again, like I said, this is not going to be easy. This is going to be hard. This is going to be hard. We're going to have to deal with MPT, and they're all about the money, but we'll deal with them. And then we're going to have to get this thing buttoned up, the construction completed. But we have great support among the building trades, many of them who live right here. Union Building Trades who live right here in Norwood, also live in Walpole. You've got a good contractor community here that wants to see this job finished. They've got a 75% finish, and they're chomping at the bit to get this thing buttoned up. They don't want to leave something, that's a matter of pride to them. They want to finish this project, and we want to see them finish it. So all the elements are there. We're going to have to do a little persuading among, some of the health officials. because they're worried. They're worried because MPT is asking for $300 million, and they're cautious. They're looking at a tight budget up on Beacon Hill, and they're worrying about how they're going to pay for this. But I think we can drive down the price because of the bargaining position we have. And at the end of the day, I think this is doable, but we're going to need your support. So God bless the families of Norwood, and let's get at it. Thank you.
Yep, we'll get there. We'll get there. I just want to share a few more slides as we talk about what we can do going from here. Just earlier today, the governor did send us this statement. It was sort of hot off the presses. I think if you read it and you just look through, I welcome the creation of a working group, look forward to collaborating. I think 10 days ago, we couldn't even necessarily get the support of the administration, and mountains have been moved, and now they want to work with us as we try to reopen Norwood Hospital. And a lot of that is due to Representative Rogers and Congressman Lynch's efforts in moving mountains. A couple of the initial steps, starting the next week, we're going to be launching what we call a microsite. We're going to be putting out a website out there that's going to contain testimonials, facts, letters of support, where we're going to drive all of our information to. It's going to mark the launch of our public outreach, and it's going to serve as an information repository. We need to make sure we continue to let the governor and her administration know that we appreciate their support, and we want them to continue to work for us, and we're going to begin working at this not insurmountable problem. You can see we've already gotten a little bit of work, so here's an early preview of what it's going to look like. We have Guilfoyle PR, our PR team, working on this. We even have a quote from Kate Walsh there that they've talked about. So this is going to be where we drive a lot of our information, and you'll be able to go to get information and updates as we move through this process. We even have a little logo that they've designed for us, and we're really saying that if people ask, what are we trying to do? Finish Norwood Hospital, finish the job. It's already been started. This working group is going to convene to see where we go and how we look at what support we can get. Goals are going to be established soon and very quickly. To the Congressman's point, this is not, let's do a study and take 12 months and then take 18 months after that. Things are going to start to move quickly. The working group's going to need to outline the need, the resources, look at different options, work to connect operators with the property owners, and develop a viable business plan. And when we have an operator identified, we're going to need to work with the Health and Human Services Department, and we are going to need every single one of the 250,000 people that live in this region and the businesses to make sure at each step of that process the state hears loud and clear the need. We know it is there, but we need to make sure that that reminder to the state is constant. And again, I'm talking about the administration. And as you see up there, finish the job. That's what we need to do. It's Herculean, but we want to finish the job. Some takeaways for tonight, we're asking folks to contact the governor's office, contact the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Commissioner of Public Health. Let them know you support an acute care hospital in Norwood, and you support them in anything they can do to help us. You can find the information online, but we'll be putting it out there. Please don't think of this as a, hey, I sent in a letter and signed a petition, I did my part. We're going to need regular work from the people and the businesses in this region. And I want to talk for a moment about the businesses in the region. When we talk about putting together a group, this region has significant economic assets. We are the home, Norwood alone is the home of Fortune 500 companies. Moderna has invested almost $1 billion in under 10 years. FM Global is undergoing a $500 million expansion of their headquarters here in Norwood. The Kraft Group has invested billions of dollars just down the road in Foxborough. There are significant economic interests that impact the entire state right here in the center of Norfolk County, and we are going to be drawing on them and their expertise and their influence to finish this job. Also, let Representative Rogers and Senator Rush and Congressman Lynch's office know that you support them. They're 110% behind it, but they deserve the credit for getting us this far. And I can tell you, every time I go somewhere in the state and they say, who's your state rep? And I say, John Rogers, they say Norwood Hospital, because he's talking about it every day, and Mike Rush is talking about it every day, and the congressman calls me, he talks about it every day. We're doing what we can do, but I can tell you I've never seen a delegation more unified and more together and more easy to reach in working on this issue. Stay tuned, the campaign's just starting. So we'll take some questions to the extent we have answers. We have more questions ourselves, but if there are some questions we can try to answer, we'd be more than happy to, and I'll get to play moderator so I can have somebody else answer the questions. But if folks have a question, raise your hand, stand up, and shout it out. Old school town meeting style. We'll go to Steve. The question was, when does MPT go to court at Suffolk County? The short answer is I'm not sure. There's a hearing, I think, in a few weeks. And this is an interesting situation where MPT is the big evil REIT, but on the other hand, we don't want that DON to go away. It's going to come down to a technical interpretation of the law, is the best answer I can give you. But I think sometime in February is the next hearing on that particular item. Up here with the blue scarf. Sure. So my understanding of the process, let's say that MPT is not successful in court, so there's a new DON. So Bob's hospital company comes in and says, we're going to build a hospital. They have to put together a business plan, and they write out what they consider that determination and need to be, and that goes to a hearing on the state. So the business plan, if you will, needs to be viable. And I know it sounds terrible to talk about healthcare in terms of business plans. That is the world we live in. And then the state will review that. So if it's a whole new determination of need, that is going to be probably the most important meeting we've had in 20 years in Norwood and Central Norfolk County to make sure that when they have a hearing on that, the state hears loud and clear, this is what the need is. I know it's a half answer, but as I said, we don't really have any questions. John or the Congressman, do you want to fill in or no? Yeah.
MPT as the plaintiff and the Department of Public Health as the defendant on a motion to dismiss the case. The Honorable Peter Krupp will be hearing that on February, I think it's February 13th, to give you the exact date. It's Suffolk Superior Court in the BLS, the Business Litigation Session. And I think that hearing will go from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So the judicial process is marching on. And they have, because it's BLS, the boss saw the business litigation session, it has to be expedited. So either MPT has standing, to sue the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth's position is they lack the standing because they're a real estate investment or trust. They're not a license holder. They don't hold the determination of need, but MPT is arguing back and will argue before the judge, and will cite the legislation that we passed to extend certificates and licenses and permits like the one we're talking about for a period of 2 years. So the judge will have to make a ruling on that passed. And with regard to the psych beds, we were disappointed that the 61 psych beds that Norwood had for so long were not in the determination of need. We also had the birthing center, which is so much important to many of us. I mean, I was born there, my daughters were born there. Many of us were born there. It's so important and significant and symbolic to all of us. We were saddened that the determination of need was not included, did not include the birthing center. And the rationale that the administration, the Baker administration, gave to Senator Rush at the time is because there was no regional need, that Norwood was averaging a baby a day, and that you need 3 babies a day in order to break even. So that was sort of the reason. That was the math. I didn't say I agreed with it. But we did say to the governor on Monday, Governor, we need you to use your powerful voice to say, we want another acute care hospital, and this administration will approve a DON. And perhaps even better, to get those psych beds back and to get the birthing center back. So that's what we'll be fighting for when we get to that stage, is to get those psych beds back here in Norwood and the birthing center.
We'll go 1, 2, 3, so we'll start right here.
I think we're skipping a step here, though. There ultimately have to be financial incentives for anybody to be willing to jump into this project. So if there are any financial incentives for any operators to come in and take on this project, positive ones, or are there any negative financial incentives for MPT to be motivated to release the property. They can sit on a non-performing asset for a long time if they're smart. They don't have to rush to get rid of it. It's only going to go up in value with the real estate in this area. So I don't hear any talk about that, so I'm curious what our Congress people say.
Sure, would you like to take that? Would you like me to start off as answering, or?
Actually, you know, it's really a bad position for them to have a non-performing asset. So they've got investors. How long do you keep your investors there losing money? So there's pressure on them to make a deal, to pull some money out. They won't get their $300 million investment. They know that. And even though you think that, you know, that they can wait us out, I think it's the other way around. There's an urgency on our part to get a hospital reestablished there. There really is. But for them, look, Norwood controls the zoning on the site. The state controls the licensing and every other aspect of what they would like to do on that site. You know, it's a hospital zone. So, you know, they would have to make a huge effort over a long period of time to turn this around, to find another. Think about it. Suppose they wanted to sell it to somebody else for some different purpose. How do you think this town and the other towns would respond to that? How do you think the governor would respond to that? They're sort of, they're really stuck. The other thing is, you know, I've got 5 hospitals that have closed in the last 10 years. You know, Quincy Hospital, I just lost Kearney. Norwood's down for a different reason, but, you know, the flood. Good Sam was down because of a fire. Brockton Hospital was down because of, you know, mechanical problems as well. I'm going to a walkthrough for Pappas Children's Rehab tomorrow in Canton. That's just been, they just announced they're closing that. The New England Sinai in Stoughton, that was closed. That's in my district as well. That was closed. So all of these properties, it's been the owner that is under stress. It's not been, you know, I think you're right. We're going to have some type of incentive, and that could be, we could expedite the whole licensing process if we got, let's say, I thought that Mass General would be the best match for Norwood. Proximity, services, level of care. Mass General already has a license in the state. They have a determination of need on their own hospital. They have a number of outlying facilities as well. It could be a case where we petition the state to waive, to simply allow them to use that license at Norwood. That would save about 1.5 years for that institution to take over Norwood, which normally a DON would take 18 months because you've got to prove, you know, it's a regulatory and bureaucratic process. It requires a lot of data, a lot of evidence. But if we had an actual operating, going concern, a hospital in place in Massachusetts with a valid license in their hand, I think it would be a much easier argument with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kate Walsh, to say, these people are competent. They're already running a hospital in the state. Let them take over Norwood. That would collapse. So there's those type of incentives. And I also think it's fair to say that if we can get that property for a decent price, the state would be crazy, given the need for more beds in the Commonwealth. The state would be crazy not to take the bargain that they would have with a 75% completed hospital and a reasonable price to you know, reopen Norwood Hospital to answer that unmet need. Yeah, thanks.
We'll go great. Right here in the blue shirt.
I heard the term eminent domain used earlier, and I was wondering if that might be something that could be used as a possible bargaining chip. Is that realistic, or?
So the short answer is yes and no. We could take the property tomorrow, right? The problem is you have to pay the market value to somebody, and you have to pay that within a certain amount of time in Massachusetts if the town were to do it. And the problem with hospital financing is a lot of these numbers are made up. It's worth $150 million as a hospital. As an office building, you couldn't pay that and ever get a return on that. So to the Congressman's point earlier, it's interesting, MPT has an interest in doing something with it because as a hospital, they can get a lot of money for it. Nobody's gonna buy it as an office building. It's not worth it and the land's not worth it. That's an option, and we talked about what are our options. Sure, if it came to the point where we knew we could be successful, that it's worth X dollars and we felt that that would help, but we've got to have an operator that comes in and says, look, I can finish construction, but I got to get the property for X, and then if we can make that happen, that's what we would try to see how we can make it happen. I don't think there's anything we wouldn't do to make it happen if we knew it would work. In the back in the purplish shirt. So that's good. I'll take the question back for us. Has Mass General shown an interest? The short answer is we're not sure. We're going to have a group with some heavy hitters that can speak directly with executives at Mass General. I know that Representative Rogers had told me that the state had talked to them about buying the whole network, but not Norwood specifically. So the short answer is we'll take a good operator, and I think we need to start engaging directly, because MPT is going to say that, well, the state, we don't know what they're going to do. The state's going to talk about MPT. So part of what we need to do is be hosting those conversations ourselves to make sure we're getting the right people at the table. Right here.
I just wanted to say thank you for presenting such a compelling argument with the numbers and the facts and the statistics, because that really does speak to what we did at Norwood Hospital. I'm a forward Norwood Hospital nurse, and I also worked at St. E's and Carney. So I've experience with quite a few of the Stewart hospitals. I did have a question about the leasehold, because I understood that that was a sticking point, and that was one of the reasons why we couldn't move forward with a deal. If a deal is struck, is that leasehold going to be null and void, or will we be able to get out of it?
I'm not sure what lease
So
you're
my
referring to.
understanding was that when Stewart sold back to MPT around 2018-19 when they restructured, part of the problem was that they had to lease back the hospitals. So the hospitals were paying like a high rental price. Yeah. And that's what basically bankrupted them. So is Norwood is the ground basically under it, leased by MPT, or will that be null and void?
So MPT owns the ground and the building. There's no other owners. Now, they don't lease their properties for next to nothing, so that's part of the problem. So let's say you're Ann's Hospital Company and you want to build a hospital. You got to say, okay, I got to buy it for $50 million, and then I got to put $150 million into it. I'm making these numbers up, and then I need $100 million to get it up and running. You're going to have to see if you can go borrow that $350 million. But the building, the land, everything, it is only owned by MPT. No other mortgages, no other secret shady ownership. This complicated fugazi ownership over the years has been a nightmare to unravel, but at least the property, the land, it is 100% owned by Medical Properties Trust. They can turn around and sell it tomorrow. There might be a problem if they were to try to lease it. There was some legislation passed recently that I think might prevent that. John, briefly, do you want to address, or just, you can, yeah. So that might be complicated. They want to sell. What they've said to me, and trust them as far as you can throw them, they want to sell and they want to be out of Massachusetts. We want a hospital. The governor wants them out of Massachusetts. I'll go here in the black jacket and then the green one. If you're loud, you can yell.
First of all, thank you guys for coming tonight. But Medical Properties Trust does not operate hospitals. They're not a hospital operator. The most sense I've heard tonight, believe it or not, is from Congressman right there. You got it. Congressman Lynch. Mass General Brigham, you get Governor Healy in a room, close the door, and don't let her out until you make the decision. That is it. I don't want to hear all this about leasing and this and all the legalese and the jurisprudence. You know what you can do with that, don't you? Huh? It's crazy. We need a hospital. I mean, do you know how many people don't make it in the transportation from going to these different places? Good Sam from here, someone has a heart attack, they don't make it. I mean, this isn't a joke. This is serious stuff. Task force, please leave it alone. Do something. Make it happen. We're 4 years out, all right? It's time for decision making. Make a decision. And Lynch had it right. He's talked about this before. I've heard him. This is not the first time, and I'm not going to leave him alone until he gets it done. All right? Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Lynch.
Green shirt. We're not going to leave him alone either.
Thank you. I'd like to know how it is that MPT owns the property itself, not the building, just the property. I know it's through a REIT, but why is that allowed? Because the land was originally given to the hospital, given by this town. I believe there was no payment for it. So who had the legal right to that land? Can the lawyers not have said in perpetuity that that land would stay Norwood's?
I don't think I can answer what should or shouldn't have been done 100 years ago. I know Caritas had it for a long time, and then they sold it. And again, nonprofits are able to sell land to real estate investment trusts. The state has now changed those laws because we've seen the result of it, but it was sold or given to Caritas a long, long time ago. And I honestly think 100 years ago or 80 years ago, nobody ever thought something like this could ever happen. We'll go right, Mrs. Donahue up in the back. With all due respect, I am not the moderator. Madam Slater, if she's here, would be doing a poor impersonation of how well she would do.
Even though your view's not so good. Just kidding. This is a forum that you're moderating, and that's why I called you that. Congressman Lynch, Representative Rogers, Senator Rush, thank you for coming. The members of the Board of Selectmen, especially Michael Satt, thank you very much for thinking of this idea and putting the whole thing together. This is something that we need. I have quite a few questions. When, a lot of people don't have computers in their house, and some people who do have computers limited to email and stuff. So a lot of people interested in the hospital are elderly. So I was wondering, when you pass out the information, would you be kind enough to put it in the free paper so that people who don't have access to computers can get the addresses of the places that you want us to write the letters and to communicate, to put the pressure on and stuff like that. Here are some other things that I'd like to know one way or another. At the time that town meeting voted on the rezoning, who owned the land where the hospital is located?
It was MPT, right? Medical, so to your first question, yes, we'll absolutely get it out in as many formats as we can. At the time, MPT owned the land.
Are there any other town meeting members here? Does anybody remember that, hearing that at town meeting? Could you repeat that again? Did you hear that at town meeting? Weren't we led to believe that Stewart owned the land? So now the next question then becomes, have you thought about any ideas about putting the pressure on them? And I've heard talk around that at the time that this incident happened, that Stewart owned the trust, $54 million in rent. Is that true?
I'm not an expert on Stewart's financial situation. They were behind in payments throughout their system, so that's probably true, yes? Yes.
If that's the case, who is going to present that information to the court case? Because look, that's insincerity. That was totally insincere, letting them run up $54 million in rent and not letting the town of Norwood vote upon it or know about it when we rezone the land. That's a question. Then I have another question. What about rezoning the land? Has any thought been given to town meeting having some a town council write up some zone, an article that says that the building that's changed the whole town of Norwood in the center can't be used for anything other than hospital? Could we please look into that? Because people are talking about condominiums, this.
Sure.
And,
If I could, Mrs. Donahue, just to address that question, could it be something else? So it's a medical services overlay district that allows a hospital. Any type of conversion would have to go through a complicated regulatory process.
Mr. Moderator, you didn't notice me when I was waving my hand back here, and it's very hard for me to stand up. So I'm going to interrupt you for a minute.
Go
And
ahead.
what I want somebody in our government to take a look at the possibility of the town of Norwood creating an article that would put some kind of pressure or some kind of restrictions. If you have the land, you have to have the use. We put the overlay district in. We have the power to take the overlay district out. We gave them Linden Street. We gave up the access that the town of Norwood had forever to be able to walk through that property when people worked at the press and people went to the schools. We have to take some positive action to put some pressure on them and put the pressure on. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to address the question of conversions and what can people do with it, the building's value is as a hospital to anyone that's going to buy it, and that's its only value to us. To try to convert from a building perspective to any other building, it's never going to make financial sense for somebody to do that, just based on the building code and what it's been built and what it's been designed for and designed to. As for somebody coming in with some other type of property or project, at that point, Medical Properties Trust would be willing to let it go for a song and a dance, at which point we probably would take it by eminent domain and try to sell it to a hospital operator for a cheap dime. I don't think that that's going to happen, because if they're going to take a $100 million loss, they'd probably be willing to give it to us and we would just turn around and give it to a hospital operator. I just don't think that that's necessarily feasible. Doesn't mean that we won't look into making sure we can protect it. As for putting pressure on MPT, of course we want to pressure them. Taking away hospital zoning is probably not the type of pressure we can apply when we're trying to get a hospital, but I'm certainly the board will look at whatever we can do to make sure we're holding MPT to the fire. But remember, evil as they may be in some cases, we need them to come to the table and work with us and work with a hospital operator to get something done. We'll go right here. Been waiting patiently for a while.
You were saying earlier that MPT wants money for the land, right? And I heard you mention that Norwood cannot afford it, even with 5 or 6 other towns. When you had your slides up there, I noticed 21 different towns that were facilitated by Norwood Hospital. What about some of those other towns, or all of those other towns, contributing to the finances needed to help buy Norwood Hospital's land back again?
Sure. So a couple of things, just to be clear. Stop separating the land and the building in your mind, because they're one. It's one whole piece of property. We know they've played these games. Could we buy just the land? Sure. The land is probably not too expensive. What's there is probably $50 or $100 million. That's that big chunk that we need to overcome. Could we ask 21 other towns to also contribute? I think there's a possibility that if we had a plan in front of us to say, okay, there's a gap of $50 million, which towns want to buy in a piece of the property and own it? I think that's a viable option when we get there. We need a hospital operator to come in first and say they can do it and know what that gap is. And then we can try to go to 21 towns and say, how can we help get there? And the congressman spoke to this a little bit earlier, that when it comes together to put together that picture, we can do that. Right now, can we go out and buy a $150 million piece of property? We'd be sitting on it and paying the note on it without necessarily being any closer, and then hope to get a hospital tenant for free. I don't think we're able to just jump and buy it. When we have an operator that's viable if their pitcher is missing some money, that's when we can come in and say, what can we do to make this happen? And I think we can make something happen.
Well, it seems like what was said earlier is the fact that finances play a huge part in what's going on. And what I'm asking is, why can't we get these other 21 communities or towns that are partaking of the facilities that Norwood Hospital has always offered, get them to contribute money as well and lower the burden of everyone?
I hear you. I think it's going to be a hard sell to go to 20 other towns and their town meetings and ask them to borrow money without a plan in the road. It'd be the same challenge here in town meeting in Norwood. Can we get $50 million? Okay, what's the plan? What if they buy it and nobody comes? I don't think that's I think that's a viable option when we're a step or two down the road, but to try to run out first and say, we're going to go get together with everyone and buy all the land and buy the building for $150 million and then try to give it to somebody who will then build it, that's as complicated as we don't even know if somebody's interested. We got to get somebody interested first. That's sort of the first key, I would say. John, the Congressman, do you want to weigh in, or is that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Groh, right here.
So the state certified value of our rainy day fund was $8.8 billion. We started this presentation with 6 inches of rain. I think Norwood's feeling pretty wet. Why can't we just use some of that money?
So sorry, you said 8.8 billion?
Billion.
No, for the state or for Norwood?
For the state.
I mean, I would address that to the legislature. I think the problem, not that I'm throwing John under the bus, we have a problem, right? And we want the legislature to fix our problem. They've got 351 towns in Massachusetts. I am sure John Rogers would like to file a bill that says the state does it. I just don't know if that's politically the rest of the state's going to jump in and buy it. John, I mean...
We have 21 towns that are affected, right? Why can't they have representatives as well?
I think they...
So, thank you for the question, David. And I'm starting to bring up hives because I'm putting my House Ways and Means hat on. I was chair of that committee right after 9/11, and it was like the worst 4 years of my life. But I would say to your excellent question, we have about a $65 billion operating budget, and 8.8 would be about 13%, and that would be just that, and that's not enough for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for its own rainy days. So we've been putting money into the stabilization account. It used to be 7.5% of budgeted revenues, and then I fought for an outside section of the FY02 budget with the state Senate to raise that to 10%, and then just before I left Ways and Means, we fought with the Senate again to raise that to 15%, because that's where we should be. Our rainy day fund should be 15% of we're not even there yet. 8.8 billion is not enough. We should be over $10 billion for our rainy day fund. That's a healthy stabilization account for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that's designed specifically to help out Massachusetts operations. Whether it's the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, the Department of Executive Office of Public Safety, Executive Office of E&F, all that money is not enough, I think, because if you remember back in 1990, we had no rainy day fund, and our deficit was $1.2 billion out of a $12 billion budget, and we had zero money. So we created the stabilization account. In fact, we had to go to the Bank of Mitsubishi in Japan as a Commonwealth and get letters of credit because our bonds were at junk bond status. So now we're getting to the point where we almost have a healthy rainy day fund. So to use it on any other purpose would be fiscally imprudent. But excellent question.
I think just to follow up, first of all, if the state calls us and says, we'll cut you a check for $300 million, we're not saying no. I just don't know that would necessarily happen. I think we've got to direct our efforts somewhere. Getting money is important, but we need an operator. Even if we get the building and somebody buys it and donates it to us, if we don't find an operator to come in, because remember, hospitals, even Norwood, these are $400, $500, $600 million annual operating budgets. So somebody's got to look at that and make sure that they're going to make money and not lose tens of millions of dollars a year. So I think we'll get there. Those of you who are on town meeting know we're always trying to do something with our budget every year to move the shells around and get the things to balance. I think we're great at it and we can do it. It's just a matter of working to get that operator and get MPT in there and get a deal and know what we're dealing with. Because we'll do whatever it takes for the hospital, but we don't want to raise $100 million of our own money and find out that MGH could have got it for $10 million or something like that. We're not nickeling and diming it, but we've got to protect the town as well and the region. Right here in the black shirt.
Hi. I'm a nurse. I have serviced most of the towns Congressman Lynch covers, from Quincy to Walpole to Norwood, Dedham. Done the past 13 years of community-based healthcare, and I live in Norwood. So I've seen the effects on my patients and healthcare workers, my own parents. But we keep talking about like an operator. We need one single operator, right? But you have New England Sinai that closed down. They had 40 Jerry psych beds, not including what we had at Norwood. So really, in this region, we've lost 100 Jerry psych beds. And if you've ever walked through the hospitals, there are these geriatric patients who are having, psychological crises who are left as boarders, not ideal. Who would be good to take over that? Maybe McLean Hospital, right? And now we have a large pediatric population. Who would be good to treat them? Do we need one operator? Because we are in such, we just service such a large, from life to death. And that's what this hospital did. We had a cath lab, we had Jerry Psych, we had an OB unit. And you see all these other hospital systems who combine and provide good care. Like Dana-Farber has a site at Gillette, but Mass General Brigham has rebranded, and now they're dissolving their partnership with Dana. Why can't we bring multiple healthcare systems to help treat the varying needs of our patients and to invest in this as a partnership? Why does it have to be one?
Just to be clear, where I'm saying operator, we want somebody to operate the hospital. If it's a congregation, if it's two, if it's three, I don't think, not that we necessarily get to say that. Ultimately, the state has control over that. Yeah. We're not going to say that we're opposed to a partnership or three companies. It's somebody needs to come in, or some group of somebody's that can file the DON and has the capital backing to get the state to say yes, and then to finish the build out and open up the hospital.
Well, maybe we should try to lobby towards that effort, is to get a partnership of good quality health care that can service our community from life to death, and not just concentrate on one.
Yeah.
Because that's really what we need. Like, if we could get McLean in here and give us even 30 beds of Jerry Psych, I mean, the average time a Jerry Psych patient stays as a boarder in an emergency room is between 7 and 10 days. Would you want your 88-year-old mother sitting on a gurney in a hallway at 88 years old for 7 to 10 days? Now delirium setting in, like, the outcomes aren't good. There's Medicare and Medicaid cuts. Their hospitalization is longer. Their outcomes aren't good. And then it just costs everybody more money. So if we could lobby for a good partnership from really good healthcare providers, we could have a really amazing thing happening right in our town.
Right. First of all, thank you for all you do. The nurses are the backbone of our healthcare system, and I appreciate you. One of the big drags on that idea is that any provider, any operator who comes in right now to Norwood has to take on MPT as a partner. As a partner. MPT, because of the rents that they were demanding, and this was partly Steward's fault, that relationship was incestuous. They had some members of the Steward company, Steward Healthcare, that were also sitting on the board of MPT, and that was a shady deal. But so now any provider coming in the way the situation is right now would have to come in as a tenant of MPT, the landlord. The problem with that is that for-profit model is anathema to Congress. We are done. We are so done with giving Medicare and Medicaid money so people can buy yachts instead of providing health care. we, even the Republicans don't go for that, you know? So we have unanimity, we agree on something in Congress, because remember, this was a 60-hospital network, and it was present in a lot of, down in Texas and Oklahoma, a lot of red states, and their legislators and their members of Congress are as mad as we are about what Stewart has done, and this whole deal. Stewart originally owned the building and the land it sits on, and then for like $800 million, sold the land underneath to MPT. They took the money, put it in their pocket, bought some yachts, split it up among themselves, and what they were doing was Stewart was taking the money that we were giving it because they came to us and they said, we need money for Medicaid, Medicare. The state was putting money in, and they were using that to pay their rent rather than providing care to the people of Norwood and other people who were patients at that hospital. That model does not work. You can't serve two masters. You can't say, okay, I'm a hospital, I'm going to take care of patients, and then they say, but on the side, I'm going to take care of our investors and our shareholders. That does not work, because at the end of the day, the shareholders get taken care of, and the patients get the raw part of the deal, especially if they don't have somebody advocating on their behalf, like a lot of older patients. You know, that's in many cases their situation. So we got to get rid of MPT. We've got to clean house here. We've got to get a situation where we reunite the property under the land under the hospital and the hospital, one owner, not for profit, dedicated totally to taking care of the health of the people who walk into that hospital and rely on their care. That has to be the formula. We can't do this for-profit healthcare anymore. That model does not work. I do not believe in it. And I would not vote in Congress for Medicare and Medicaid money going to an organization like that. Amen. I'm sorry.
We're going to take a final question from Selectman Grow, and then we, Representative Rogers and Congressman Lynch and myself, will stay here, but we do want to sort of dismiss those of you who I can see are getting a little ready to move on with the readings. Amanda, if you want to take it, question or comment?
Thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to be the last one, but I'll just float this idea, but maybe we need the concept of medical rent control.
I think we do. I think we're all victim to this fugazi scam of rent and what these companies have done, and unfortunately, it's falling on us to figure out how to solve the problem. But that's sort of the history. Everything falls to the local level. I want to thank the board for calling this meeting. Our Board of Health and our former hospital trustees are here. Congressman Lynch and Representative Rogers and Senator Rush, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We will be here to answer questions, but thank you for coming. This is just the beginning.